Yes.
Hi. I don't work for Starwood, but I just have some insight to that. I know many of their executives who relocated from other states actually bought homes in Connecticut because it's just much, even at their salaries, it's much more affordable. So it's not surprising that they're moving their headquarters to Connecticut, especially if you have top executives spending a significant time of portion of their time commuting back and forth. So it's, I think there are a lot of great incentives for businesses to relocate to White Plains. It's just what are we doing to make White Plains and the rest of Westchester County affordable for them?
I mean, again, that's a great question and a great insight. For instance, the CEO of Starwoods lives in Connecticut, so it isn't surprising that all things being equal, they would go to Connecticut. And in this case, because of the inducements, it wasn't even equal. I mean, so it's not surprising because, as you said, a lot of their corporate staff already is living in Connecticut. So you're right. Now, as far as making White Plains and really Westchester more affordable, that has been a discussion that we've had for years, right? It's not a new thing. What's made it more difficult is the economic realities that we confront. And I can tell you that I'm in White Plains going to be inheriting an incredibly difficult budget. I expect to have a $15 to $20 million budget deficit with my next budget coming in. And I don't want to get into why, because I don't want to be sitting here looking backwards. It's not worth it. I need to look forwards. But we're looking at a very large gap. And I'm going to have to be extremely creative in trying to mitigate as much as I can so that I pass on as little as possible to taxpayers. One of the things that I'm committed to coming in, I've already said this to my transition team, $1 million in administrative jobs we're not filling. Those are jobs that I could fill, whether it's a deputy commissioner or anything like that. We are not going to fill $1 million in jobs. That's a statement to the type of effort I intend to make sure that if I'm going to have to do difficult things, they need to know that I'm starting in my house. And when I say my house, that's the city government. And unfortunately, all those creative things I might be able to do may not be enough, especially when you're dealing with a gap the size that I am. But that I'm committed to. And I think that every government at this time, if they don't understand that we need to do more with less, they're making a huge mistake. Because I think that most taxpayers understand that these are really difficult times and that there are going to be a lot of revenue shortfalls. And there may not be a perfect way to ensure that there won't be any tax increase. But they need to know that their government is actually understanding the message. And if they do see the government doing the responsible things, I think they'll be more accepting of what also might have to go with it if they know you're doing those responsible things. Because it's not only about now. I look at the situation that White Plains is in and the county is in and many of my other local communities. It's about how we situate ourselves for the future. And if we don't solve these huge gaps and these huge problems so that we can thrive when the economy picks up, we're going to have major problems long term and may not recover nearly as well as we should. And I want to make sure that White Plains continues to be the mecca for this region that it has been. And if I don't mitigate and start solving some of these structural budget problems now on my end, doing the responsible things at the government level, I can't expect to then go to the taxpayers and say, help me solve something.
Have you looked at how you can improve the efficiency of government? Because I really think the future of government is in efficiency of government, because that's a huge way to fill the budgetary gap.
Yeah, we're doing that as you speak, and as I said, the goal really is to do more with less. That means both solving specific budget problems by not filling positions that aren't really necessary, and also the efficiencies, because you can't do more with less unless you are being more efficient at doing it. So it ties really the two; they go hand in hand. But yeah, no, that's why I framed it that way, because it's absolutely a part of the equation. The other dilemma, I mean, the one thing that government has that's very different than business is the labor relations with government, as many know, and I know that we're kind of, remember, government it has restrictions that business doesn't have in how it delivers things and works with its employees. And I think for good reasons. This is not a complaint that this is what government has, but I think often in the private sector we forget that's a reality that government faces that often the private sector doesn't. For instance, you know, I may want to eliminate 50 jobs. But basically the way it works in government is the last one in is the first one out, which means it's not a merit-based system where I can say who's not performing well and let me get rid of that person. If they are protected, which again it's a system that I think is fair, but it needs to be understood by the private sector, I can't eliminate someone if I think they're not performing as well as someone else. It's a system where the last one in becomes the first one out. So recognize that we have limitations that are very, very different than the private sector, which makes it that much more complicated to solve the efficiency issues, quite frankly. Because, you know, you talk about efficiency, you know, in the normal business world, you could look at it and say who's performing and who's not, and how do I eliminate in a manner. That's not necessarily the way you can do that at the government level because of the labor agreements that we have, which creates difficulties because often when you do your cuts, you're eliminating people who might be the most talented. They might be new, but they also might be the most efficient. But we don't have the luxury of kind of analyzing in that manner, which creates obvious problems.
Thank you.
So,
Thank you, Adam.
thank you.